Hi, this is Dr. Carmen Jones, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about a different topic. My presentation today is loving yourself through transformation. Right? So maybe the idea of loving yourself, or maybe that coin term, is getting thrown around a lot here recently. And what does that really mean? Sometimes it kind of turns people off, right? But today we're going to identify how we feel about ourselves, how that has a ripple effect in affecting not just our life, but our health, our physical health, our relationships, our financial health, our wealth, our family's health, even those generations that are related to us, how that all interacts and how that all responds to what we think about ourselves, right? So I'm going to jump into this presentation today. All right, loving yourself to transformation. So what does this mean? Well, I'm going to start off with I am worth loving, right? So sometimes I'm going to introduce a couple of different concepts to us today. The first one I'm going to start out with is deservability. But I am also going to reference Louise Hay quite a bit in this program or in this presentation. She has done a lot of work in this realm. She's passed away last year, but her legacy lives on. And so there's several quotes in here that you will see that are really inspiring to me, so I like to share them with you. Loving yourself is the greatest miracle cure. Loving yourself works miracles in your life. Right? We'll kind of explain a little bit more about this as we kind of go on. But I just want to introduce this idea because oftentimes, if we think of our health as a four-legged table, all right? Our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, and our emotional health, okay? We as women are usually really good about the physical health and the mental health, right? We're really good at doing and thinking. So much so that sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in doing and thinking, right? We've got to provide for people. We've got to provide for our families. We've got to take care of our kids. We got to do our jobs. We got to grow our business. We're going. We're doing all the time, right? That's our physical health. We're thinking about it, analyzing all the time. That's our mental health. Our emotional and our spiritual health has a tendency to kind of go by the wayside. So those are things that are how we're feeling and how we're being. And it really starts to look at our subconscious. And so I'm going to introduce some different ideas today to you to help to identify where your subconscious is and if that is contributing to your health or if that is working against you. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the mind-body connection, the power of thought, and then we're going to really dive into 5 steps that are tangible of things you can start now to learn to love yourself through that transformation and really empower your life and your health. So if you've heard me talk about mind-body medicine, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It really focuses on the interactions among the brain, the mind, the body, behavior, and our emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and behavioral factors, right? We know that those all have a role in our health. And when I'm working with somebody, I'm looking at the whole person, right? It's not just holistically the whole body, but these other components as well, our mind body, our emotional body, our behavioral body, our spiritual body. The departments of mind-body medicine have begun to grow just within maybe the last 10 years. Conventional medicine is starting to recognize that relationship. And so now we're seeing mind-body medicine programs and some of sort of the top conventional universities or medical schools, the University of Maryland, Georgetown School of Medicine, Harvard, the University of California, San Francisco, even Mayo Clinic has a mind-body program. And so it's getting a little bit more, what's the word? Tread, I guess, if you will, among conventional medicine. And the reason why that's helpful is because now oftentimes we think of mind, mental health, emotional issues was always sort of a psychology issue, right? There was a lot of stigma associated with that. There was a lot of stigma that if you were having to go to a counselor or a therapist, or you'd have to get, you know, an antidepressant or something like that. And that for some communities, it still has a lot of stigma associated with it. But by science investigating more into that mind-body connection, it's kind of normalizing things a little bit. So it's giving people more options. All right. So as a naturopathic doctor, right, I have a lot of natural tools in my toolbox. And one I wanted to introduce you guys today is traditional Chinese medicine. So in traditional Chinese medicine, we have a tendency to look at the body within the 5 elements, right? And so we're not just looking at the physical body, but we're also looking at the emotional body. And so in Chinese medicine, it's been around for thousands of years, but I wanted to introduce this concept to you, okay? Because the association with emotions is a direct relationship with each organ system. And this is sort of regular practice in Chinese medicine. So much that sometimes if people come in with whether it's a physical ailment or an emotional ailment, they're relating that to what organs are involved and what other organs are being affected. Okay, so for example, the heart organ system is often associated with anxiety or overjoy, sort of this excitement, restlessness, if you will. Our spleen is associated with worry and overthinking a lot. I would put stress underneath there. Oftentimes when we see folks who have adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue, we address the spleen in Chinese medicine because that's often that over worry or overthinking things. A lot of, concerned thoughts, maybe being that overwhelmed. The lungs are associated with grief and sorrow. So sometimes if people don't have the opportunity to process and kind of work through their grief or work through sorrow, we can see that manifest in lung condition, upper respiratory issues, right? Asthma, pneumonia, bronchitis, things like that. The kidneys are associated with fear and loneliness. So if people have phobias or they have a lot of fear that inhibit them from doing things in their daily life, we always check out the health of our kidneys and see if those emotions are manifesting in a physical symptom associated with the kidneys. Things like maybe like incontinence or kidney stones or kidney infections or urinary tract infections, those sort of things. And liver's associated with anger, resentment, irritability. This one is very common. When folks have a tendency to get mad really quickly, a short fuse, if you will, if they get really irritable, impatient, that often manifests as liver. And so their face might turn red, they might get flushed, right? Sometimes we see that manifest to the liver in terms of like a sluggish detox pathway, right? Or hormone imbalance. All of those things are associated with the physical liver, and so our emotional health can contribute to the dysfunction of that organ system. All right. So the power of thought. So hopefully that kind of makes sense and kind of shows you that gap between our emotional health and our physical health, specifically our organ systems, as far as within the Chinese medicine model. I wanted to share with you this idea of power of thought, and some of you guys may have heard me speak about this before. There is this researcher, Masaru Emoto, who wrote a couple books. The Hidden Messages of Water is one of them. And what he did was a kind of a unique experiment. And what he did is he collected, this first one was collecting water samples, and then he froze them in a sub-zero freezer, and then he took a really high-powered microscope and he looked at the actual water molecules, okay, to see the variation between different watersheds is what he originally was doing, water sources. So he took water from lakes and rivers and ponds and sewers and polluted areas, springs, and he looked at sort of that variation. Then he took that several steps forward, but the ones that I want to introduce to you are he took purified water. So he said, okay, there's a lot of variations within water, but how can we influence that water, right? Not just with chemicals, as far as like pollution and stuff that we clean the water with, that we filter the water with, but can we influence water with our thoughts or with physics? Okay, so he took purified water and he put them in different bottles. And what he did is this first experiment is he took words and he taped them to the different bottles. And so all the water's the same, right? It's all been filtered, it's all been purified. The variable was that he taped different words. So some of those words were positive words like thankful, grateful, happy, brave, proud, stuff like that. And then he took words that were not so positive, like bad, ugly, disgusting, those sorts of words, and taped them to different bottles of water, froze them in the sub-zero freezer. And then what he did is he looked again at those water molecules underneath the microscope, and he compared what the water molecules look like, right, between the positive and the negative, just words taped to the container, right? And what he found was really interesting. Okay, he then took that another step further, and he looked at adding pictures and influencing water with music. And so he did different types of things, and you can kind of look his information up online to get a little bit more thorough review of it. But this is what I want to show you, is that you can see these water molecules that he added the positive words to: love and gratitude, thank you, peace, wisdom, right? We know that we've always been told our whole lives that there's no two snowflakes alike, right? And so this kind of demonstrates that a little bit. But you can see these symmetrical crystalline structures, right? They look like what we think of as a typical snowflake. Compare that to the negative stimuli, the negative words that were taped on there, things like you fool, you disgust me, or evil, right? These don't look like what we think of. They don't look like snowflakes, right? They don't look like the typical water molecule that we expect. And yet they are. They're just frozen water molecules, but you can see how the structure of the waters, the chemical structure of the water is the same, but the vibration of that water is very different with those influences. So I share this with you because our body is a significant amount of water, right? Anywhere from 60 to 75% water. So what we think and what we say to ourselves on a daily basis has a significant effect on our physical health, right? Those vibrations that we think to ourselves, right? If we have a tendency to, think that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy. Those are negative things that will impact our health and impact the water, or even within our cellular structure, those vibrations that we think that we put out. So I wanted to share this with you, kind of underline why it's even important, right? Why this idea of self-love is even worth considering or working towards or putting, kind of giving you the motivation to kind of put the work into it. Okay. So I told you that I'm going to refer to Louise Hay. So she put out this book, You Can Heal Your Life, that I love. It's not a very long book, and it's kind of a workbook that goes through a lot of things. One of the things in there is saying goodbye to limiting thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. Okay. So what I am going to have you do is I want you to do a couple of things. I want you to get a notebook and a piece of paper, okay? Or a piece of paper and a pencil. And I want you to write down 25 things that you are thankful for. Okay, you don't have to write down all 25, but I want you to write a note. This is your homework, okay? Is that I want you to write down 25 things that you're thankful for, okay? It might get a little bit tricky after a little while, but usually we can do that within, about a day, maybe an hour or two. Set yourself a timer and give yourself some time and say, you know what, I'm going to come up with 25 things that I'm thankful for, right? Whether those things are just anything that you are thankful for, right? That we're going to talk about that gratitude a little bit later. The second part of your homework is I want you to get this is going to take a couple pieces of paper, but you get another piece of paper and I want you to write down 50 things that you like about yourself. Okay. I know some of you may be thinking, wow, that's impossible. I can't even come up with one, or maybe I can come up with a handful, right? This is a challenge. I want you to come up with 50 things that you like about yourself. Okay. Some people will try to cheat and they may say the same thing 50 times. It has to be 50 unique, different things that you like about yourself. Okay. So write that down as homework because I want you to work on those things. That's going to help to reframe our thought process. Okay. Even if those things are things that you never told anybody or you're embarrassed to admit, doesn't matter. Write them down. Okay. All right. So 5 steps to help you learn how to love yourself. Okay, so we're gonna go through these. The first one is a belief system, our deservability. Second is forgiving ourselves. 3 is being gentle, kind, and patient with ourselves. Be kind to our mind, and then loving yourself to health. Okay. So the first one is our belief system. So what does that mean? Our belief system is kind of what shapes us. All right. All that we ever deal with is thoughts, and thoughts can be changed, right? If you've listened to our podcast at Thrive and Aligned Healing, you know that we often talk about our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, right? So this is trying to determine, where does our belief system come from? Where do those thoughts come from, right? The majority of us have our thoughts about ourselves formed by the time we were 7. So our experiences from baby to 7 influences how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world as adults. All right. So oftentimes our belief systems are shaped by our parents, our friends, our grandparents, our churches, media, social media, advertisements, teachers, coworkers, friends, right? All of those play into our worldview or our belief system. So sometimes we have to kind of tease that apart a little bit to figure out, okay, is this what I believe about myself? Is that true, right? And why do I think that's true? Who's told me that? Or, like, where have I seen that? Where, oftentimes, a lot of us struggle with weight and we think that our body is not good enough. Well, where does that come from? Right? Well, we think of, the obvious ones, our commercials, our, TVs. Maybe we had a parent or a coach or somebody make a comment about our body, how we look, what we weigh, right? And we have a tendency to hold on to that, right, as a truth. But it's not, in the big scheme of things, that's not a truth, right? You can't defend that in court to say, hey, your body has this defect. You can't defend that in court. That's not a truth. That's something we've learned to believe, right? There's something called the deservability factor. And this looks at what we think we deserve, right? So oftentimes this also comes from our belief system, right? Like if people will think, to be financially successful, right? To have $1 million, you have to work really hard for it, right? You have to sacrifice, right? All these things. We have to suffer for us to be happy, for us to be successful, right? And those are also part of our belief system. That's often the way that we grew up, right? If we saw that with our grandparents, with our parents, with our environment, then that they had to suffer to be successful in their relationships, in their finances, in their health, right? that's not necessarily true, right? That's a story that we've seen, that we believe, and we have integrated into our belief system. So then we think in order to be loved, right, or to be worthy, we don't deserve it unless we do something first, right? Like we have to do something first. We're not acceptable just the way that we are, right? So deservability is looking at how much we love ourselves so that we can love others, right? Or if we think, okay, people aren't going to love me because I'm not, right, perfect, or because I'm not, fill in the blank. So that's our first, is just identifying what is your belief system and where does that come from, okay? So here's a couple quotes. So quit shitting all over yourself. That's no way to treat someone you love, right? When we think, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? That isn't helping us. If you think, oh gosh, I should have done this, I should have done that, you are reprimanding yourself, right? Or you're setting yourself up to think, gosh, whatever I did wasn't good enough, right? When whatever you do is enough, right? We are enough. We are worthy. So taking that should out of our vocabulary can be a little bit challenging at the beginning, but I want you to think, okay, when you hear yourself think or say that word should, oh, I should have done this, I should have blah, blah, blah. I want you to stop yourself, okay, and be like, wait a minute. Why am I saying that, right? Why am I saying that, and is that true, right? If what I did was enough, I did the best I could with the information that I had at that time, right? We often don't go around like telling people you could have done that better, right? Or we, don't often go around reprimanding people all the time, especially people we don't know. We may be passing them in the street, but we have a tendency to do that to ourselves a lot. So keeping that should out of our vocabulary, or at least recognizing when we use it, how are we using it, right? All right, forgiving ourselves, right? So newsflash, you're not perfect. Nobody is, right? Before you love yourself, you have to forgive yourself. So sometimes people think, oh yeah, okay, like they don't put a lot of weight into forgiveness. And I think a lot of us kind of have learned this the hard way, because sometimes it's easier to it's not easy, all right? But sometimes if you have the option between forgiving yourself and forgiving somebody else, sometimes it's easier to forgive other people than forgiving ourselves, right? Because we have a tendency to kind of hold on, like, I messed up this one time and now I'm going to think about it and think about it and think about it. And now I'm going to measure up all my other activities based on that one time that I failed or that I did something wrong. Now, whether you actually failed or whether that was a perceived failure are two different things, right? But loving ourselves and it involves forgiving ourselves, right? We have a failed relationship, if we have a failed business, right? If we, feel like we failed as a parent, forgiving ourselves is the number one way that we can move past that and begin to grow and be better, right? We need to practice learning from our mistakes, right? Rather than punishing ourselves for them. We're very good punishers as human beings. Letting go of the past, right? We hear that all the time. Let go of the past, let go of the past, right? I had a interesting, let's see, I can't remember who talked about this, but workshop I was listening to a while ago, and they were talking about how, let's see, I want to try and get it right. How our thoughts, okay, are in the present, right? So we've had a past experience, right? Whether that was a trauma, a failure, whatever that past experience was, when we put our thoughts into it and we think about it, right, it becomes part of our belief system, but it also becomes part of our suffering, right? Um, the past is the past. And don't get me wrong, the past happened, right? So whatever experience you had in the past, acknowledge that that happened, right? But then letting it go so that it doesn't hang over us is important, and recognizing our thoughts about the past that is causing our suffering, we can change those, right? So we can't change the fact that you had a traumatic experience, right? We can't change that happened. That's in the past. That happened. That's history, right? But your thoughts and emotions around that, we can directly affect that, right? You have control over those things. The same thing for the future. So the future is, we don't even know what's going to happen in the future. But when we have a tendency to like get anxious about it, or worried, or we're fearful of the unknown, right? What could happen in the future? The future is another event that's just, it's going to be there, right? It's going to happen before, it's going to happen in its own time. But our putting thoughts into that future is contributing to our suffering. So letting go of the past, being present with our feelings now, right? And reframing those events so that we encourage I encourage people, okay, being in the moment and recognizing, hey, when those thoughts or feelings of unworthiness, of those negative thoughts come aboard, right, in our mind, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to push them away. They just may be coming in from all different directions. It's really looking at, okay, what thoughts are true, right? Which very rarely are they all true. But also, is it true that it could hold up in a court of law? How much of it is you punishing yourself? How much of it is not letting go of the past because somebody said something to you, right? An experience that you had that was a negative experience that you're holding on to, or that we're not giving opportunity to kind of forgive so that we can move on, right? All right, so now you're growing and changing, and you will live life differently, right? Just knowing these things is already opening the door for growing and change. All right. So this is a mantra that I'd like for you guys to write down. I have this one up in my, well, I've moved, but it used to be up in my bathroom. I forgive myself and I set myself free, right? You have that power, right? I'm going to encourage you to use it. I give myself permission to let go, right? Right. Be gentle, kind, and patient, right? So this is easy to say. Be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself, be patient with yourself as you learn these new ways of thinking, right? It's not an all or nothing situation. We're still growing, we're still transforming, transcending. So being patient with that process. And treat yourself as you would someone you really loved, right? So I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take a moment and think of you as a younger person, all right? I want you to think of you as a child. When, say, you were 4 or 5 years old, okay? I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to picture you as a 4-year-old, okay? And I just want you to observe, right? What is your 4-year-old self doing? What are they doing? What do they look like? What emotions are they showing? Do they look happy? Do they look sad? Are they sitting still? Are they doing an activity? I just want you to observe that 4-year-old child, okay? Version of yourself, right? Now, I want you to squat down and come eye to eye with that 4-year-old child in your mind. And I want you to look your 4-year-old self in the eye, and I want you to ask yourself, okay, what do you want? Okay, so whether your inner child was happy or sad, playful or angry or upset, I want you to get down on their level and ask them, what do they want? Okay, and I want you to really listen to that answer, or just really kind of internalize it and think, okay, what does your inner child need? Okay, now I want you to help that child feel safe. Okay, if you can give that child whatever it asked for, I want you to try to do that. But and then I want you to step back and think, okay, as an adult, what can I do to help that child, help this child feel safe? Okay. All right. In my workshop, I usually have folks do this as their 6-year-old self or their 7-year-old self as well, because oftentimes our needs change as we get older. Okay. But this is a good start. I want you to think about that inner child. I want you to think about giving that child love and attention, and helping that child love themselves. Okay? So we have power over that. We have control over that. Right? So I want you to think about that. When we have a tendency to should on ourselves, if we have a tendency to punish ourselves with our thinking, or think that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, right? I want you to think about that inner child. I want you to think about your 4-year-old self and what you know now as an adult. How would you communicate that to your inner child, right? What would you do to show them they're 4, right? What would you do to show them that inner child, that he or she is amazing, right? That they're loved, that they're worthy, that they are enough. Show that to them. Okay. All right. You don't need to be perfect to inspire others, right? Let people get inspired by how you deal with your imperfections, right? In society, we have a tendency to kind of think, well, gosh, we're not good enough, right? We have to be perfect in order to do what you want to do, in order to find the perfect, your soulmate, or the perfect relationship, right? Again, we already said nobody's perfect, but that you have to be perfect, right, to have a loving, healthy relationship, that you have to be, perfect to start a new business, to jump into that adventure, right? It's not about whether we're perfect or not, because nobody is, right? So whether being comfortable in our skin and loving ourselves enough to follow our dreams, right? All right. So be kind to your mind. Okay? Overcoming negative thoughts. Don't hate yourself for having thoughts. Gently to change our thoughts. Positive affirmations can be really helpful. Prayer and scripture and devotionals can be really helpful. So we're talking about being kind to your mind, right? This is kind of the summary of what we've been talking about. Being kind to our mind is like the power of words, looking at those snowflakes or those frozen water samples of how what we think and what we say has an effect over our overall health. So overcoming those negative thoughts, right? Not hating ourselves for having those thoughts, right? Being forgiving of ourselves. Would we punish a 4-year-old child for having those thoughts? Right? Keeping your inner child in mind is going to be really helpful, because that you have kids, or if you've worked with kids, right? What is the word? Development, right, is really important. And just when their kids are 4, they're still like learning about themselves, about their body, about the environment and the world around them, right? As an inner child exercise, you have the opportunity to make that a positive learning experience, right? All right, so there's always a bright side to everything. Right? So this is the silver lining idea. I wanted to share this story with you guys, and maybe you guys have heard this. I'm not sure. There we go. Of the 2 wolves, right? This is an old Cherokee tale, is how it's been shared with me. But so a Cherokee grandpa told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people, right? He said, "My son, the battle is between 2 wolves inside us all. One is evil. It's anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf within us is good, right? It's joy, it's peaceful, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." He says, the grandson thought about it, and for a minute he asked his grandfather, "Well, which wolf wins? We always have 2 wolves warring against each other in our mind, in our body. Who wins?" And the grandpa replied, "The one that you feed," right? Which is exactly right. If we have a tendency to feed those negative thoughts, those negative feelings about ourselves, it perpetuates, it becomes the cycle. So stopping that cycle and just recognizing, hey, even if it's just neutral, right? Some people aren't ready to go on the total 100% positive, happy side. That's okay. Just getting to neutral is a huge step in just trying to find this balance in promoting our health and working on our emotional and spiritual health. All right, so Lucille Ball told us that you have to love yourself and everything else falls in line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world. All right. So here we go. Love yourself. Do it. Do it now, right? It's not about waiting. It's not about waiting until you get well or until you lose weight or until you get a new job or find the right relationship. It's really beginning now and doing the best you can, right? It's a process. Like I said, nobody's perfect. We've established that. Nobody's perfect, right? In this whole entire world. We're all on a journey, right? We're all on a journey. You have the opportunity to choose for that journey to be the better version of yourself, right? To be working towards something that's in the growth, in that thriving and aligned plane, right? I want you to think of, what do you think a child needs to feel loved, right? We talked about that. I want you to think of when you're starting to kind of get down or those negative thoughts are starting to pop up in your head. Think about, how you would, if you would give that child a hug, if you would talk to them, right? If you would bring them something physical to help to comfort them. But what does that child need, right? And what does it really take to feel loved? All right. I love me. I love and accept myself right now, right? That's the key, is it's right now. It's not putting this constraint on ourselves that, oh yeah, I'll love myself when I'm good enough. You are good enough right now. Okay, so a couple more things to wrap it up in loving yourself to health. So making your health a priority, right? We're always going to have ups and downs in our health, right? Some people think we have to be 100% perfect. If we start a health plan, a protocol, if you will, if we start a diet, if we start a supplement regimen, if we start, healthy eating or exercise, people think we have to be 100% perfect. That's just not true, right? It's going to be ups and downs on a daily basis. And that's okay. It's if the trend is up as far as getting healthier, right? Getting more motivated. If the trend is down in things like losing weight, right? Or eating less junk food, eating less processed food, right? It's a trend and it's the pattern that's important, right? But starting now is something that I can't reiterate to you, right? People will think, oh yeah, I'll start that on Monday. It takes it now. It's right. It's just baby steps. It's better decisions on a regular day-to-day basis. We have over 1,000 different choices that we have to make on a regular basis, anywhere from not just our thought process, but even just food choices, right? What we should have to drink, what we should have, for breakfast, what we should have for a snack. Oh, you walk past the donuts in the break room. Oh, should I have one of those or not, right? We constantly are being bombarded with options and with choices. And so making sure that we recognize those choices on a regular basis and staying true to ourselves and what our end goal is for our health is important, right? Tuning into your feelings, right? And not worrying about those around you. It's about you, right? We know that you and your emotions are the only thing that you have control over. We don't have control over who sits next to us, what their reaction is going to be. And so it's not worth the energy worrying about it. Okay? And it takes a little while to let that go, but it's going to serve you so much better when you recognize that you are in control of you. You're 100% in control of you. You're in control of your feelings, right? All right. Be willing to learn what your feelings are trying to tell you. So it takes a little bit of sleuthing work sometimes when we have these thoughts kind of pop into our head. If we get, a dark cloud happens all of a sudden, or we get anger or irritable all of a sudden, and kind of stepping back and getting that perspective and figuring out, why is this happening, right? What are these feelings trying to tell me? What are these emotions trying to tell me, right? We know that our thoughts shape our beliefs and shape our actions. So recognizing what those thoughts are, where they come from, and then deciding whether that's something that we are going to act on or not, right? Because that is what you have the power and that control over. Okay. Being around positive people, right? We've heard that you are a reflection of the top 5 people that you spend time with. So making sure that those people that you spend time with are people who think like you, people that support you, right? People that are growing like you want to. Treat others with respect, be true to yourself, and take time to create that inner balance. That inner balance doesn't just happen. We have to create it, right? We have to create it on a regular basis, actually, to make that, to improve our health, right? So creating that inner balance, if you guys have heard of positive affirmations, that's one that people don't use as much anymore, but it's very helpful in reminding ourselves and kind of retraining our mind to kind of think positively or to be grateful. Loving ourselves. So there's something called mirror work, and there's something called mirror neurons. And so some psychologists will recommend you do mirror work. And so that is like looking at yourself in the mirror and saying positive things, positive affirmations, right? Hopefully maybe I've shared some with you today. If any of those resonated, start there. The other thing is that we have a tendency to have mirror neurons in our brain that neurologists have identified. And what those mirror neurons do, it's a survival technique, but they will mirror the what they see, in the sense, so if you've ever had a situation where you're in a room and people were crying, right, and then you felt like you wanted to cry, or people were angry and you felt like you wanted to be angry, right? You were happy and you felt like, oh, well, I'm in a good mood. Our body has a tendency to mirror what it sees, right? So that's sort of the default or the reflex, right? So when I say, that we're a reflection of the 5 people around us, right? Those mirrored actions, we have a tendency to do as well, right? So we kind of have a control over that. But we can also use that when we do mirror work and looking in the mirror and talking to ourselves and having those positive affirmations, right? Showing ourselves love and support. We're getting that from ourselves, so we don't always have to go to an outside source. All right. So I'm going to encourage you guys to live an empowered life, right? That means making conscious choices by you, the author and creator of your life, right? Nobody else has that power. Don't give anybody else that power. You have the power to do that. So it means not just taking responsibility for your choices and decisions, but also taking control of them, right? When you make those conscious decisions to take control of your life, you develop high levels of self-esteem, drive, and courage to live your personal best. Let me say that again. When you make a conscious decision to take control of your life, to develop high level of, to take control of your life, you develop a high level of self-esteem, drive, courage, and you live your personal best, right? That's kind of our ultimate goal. So making those conscious decisions and recognizing where they're coming from is what's going to lead you to where you want to be. All right, so we have the power to empower ourselves, right? This is self-empowerment. It doesn't have to be from an outside source, but hopefully I've uncovered some things for you today to share your experience, right? To guide you and to recognize where your thoughts are coming from, where your beliefs are, and shaping the actions that you want to achieve. Okay, perfect. So last thing, be yourself, accept yourself, value yourself, forgive yourself, bless yourself, express yourself, trust yourself, love yourself, and empower yourself. I hope you guys have enjoyed this talk today. If you would like more support, please reach out to us at thriveandalignedhealing.com. You can email me directly at info@drcarmenjones.com. But we will do our best to kind of help to support you. Check out our other online resources, upcoming events, and our courses and programs, right? We also do have a podcast that goes out every week that you can find it on Thrive and Aligned Healing, with Thrive and Aligned Healing on Spotify and iTunes. All right. I hope this helped, and you guys have a great day.